Good morning. I'm Glenn Lowry, Director of the Museum of Modern Art, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this announcement, and I'm particularly delighted that Patti Cisneros, her husband Gustavo, her son Guillermo, and her daughter Adriana are here with us this morning because we are thrilled that we have received at the Museum of Modern Art an extraordinary gift from Patti's collection that will add more than 100 works of modern art by major artists from all over Latin America to our collection. This gift will also establish the Patricia Phelps de Cisneros Research Institute for the Study of Art from Latin America here at the Museum of Modern Art, which will be dedicated to the study and interpretation of modern and contemporary art from Latin America. The breadth of this gift is unprecedented in the history of art from Latin America. It includes 102 paintings, sculptures, and works on paper between the 1940s and the 1990s, made by 37 artists working in Brazil, Venezuela, and Rio de la Plata region of Argentina and Uruguay. They join 40 works previously given to the Museum of Modern Art, generously by Patti and Gustavo, over the last 16 years. Among the major highlights in this gift of art are works by Willis de Castro, Elio Oiticica, Juan Melé, an artist new to our collection, Mira Chandel, Jesus Rafael Soto, and Gego. And that's just the beginning. Patti has told us that she hopes that this gift, the combination of the body of work and the establishment of the Institute, will be transformative, changing the way the history of art and artists from Latin America is told in relationship to modernism. Patti, there's no doubt that we'll achieve your goal. In fact, the next few years will be very busy for us. We will organize and present a major exhibition of modern works drawn from the Cisneros gift and will publish an accompanying scholarly catalog. In the meantime, when you visit the museum's galleries, you will see how works by these artists from Latin America literally fit alongside their European and American contemporaries. The Cisneros Institute that we are announcing today, to be located here at the Museum of Modern Art, is poised to become the preeminent research center in the field. It will offer opportunities for curatorial research, host visiting scholars and artists, convene an annual international conference, and produce scholarly research on art from Latin America. This gift is a dream come true for the Museum of Modern Art. We have been an advocate for the prominent place of art from Latin America within the historical context of modern art since 1931, when we became the first museum outside Latin America to collect works by artists from this region. Today, MoMA's collection includes nearly 6,000 works by artists from Latin America. The Museum of Modern Art is profoundly grateful to you, Patti, and to you, Gustavo, and to your entire family, not just for the historic gift we are announcing today, but for your long-standing and unwavering commitment to the institution and to expanding the understanding and appreciation of Latin American art and artists in the history of modern and contemporary art, not just here in New York, but around the world. From all of us, thank you profoundly for making this the home of the Institute and your gift. And now, Patti, I'd like to invite you on stage for a brief conversation about the gift itself. So if you sit here, Patti. So first of all, Patti, thank you again for making all of this possible. What I'd like to do now is have a conversation to just introduce everyone here to the collection and to your aspirations for the Institute. And let's start with just a little background. How did you begin collecting Latin American art and why?
Well, first of all, thank all of you for being here with us today. I couldn't be more delighted. It's something we've been working towards for 40 years or so. But I actually wanted to start the conversation by thanking you, Glenn Lowry, because when you first entered the museum, I think it was 1994, and we were having lunch that week, and you made it very apparent that you wanted the Museum of Modern Art to become even more international than it already was at the time, and that Latin America would be a very important part of this expansion and of your interest. The Museum of Modern Art was founded in 1931, and Alfred Barr and Mrs. Rockefeller always manifested their interest for Latin America. I mean, in fact, I think the second one-man show was Diego Rivera. So there has been a long tradition of Latin American art at this museum. And when you said how you wanted to really pursue and maybe pick up the momentum a bit and help fill in some gaps that might be, I said, you were the one that put the idea in my head that I could someday aspire that these very deserving artists from Latin America, because this is all about, it's not about our collection, it's not about me, it is about the museum, but it's mostly about the artist. And I truly believe that all of these artists have been under-recognized and need the recognition and can easily fit into the when you talk about art, the canon of art history. And I think what other place better than in the United States and in the best museum that has the best holdings of modern art works could it be than here? And so I actually maybe went ahead of myself, but basically it's a thank you to you. If I hadn't felt that conviction on your part, we would still have continued with our work we do at the collection, and but I might not have been so motivated as I was today to think that we can help make a difference in the way we're going to rewrite and tell the history of art after this. I think it'll be difficult to write a book on modernism and not include art from Latin America. But now do you want me to ask the question? I don't know.
Sure.
But we started, Gustavo and I started collecting as I think most young couples might. We were living in a country where the modern aesthetic was very strong, and it was. I was brought up in Caracas in the 50s, and when I'd go to school, I would see outdoor sculptures, murals of Gego, Soto, Arp, Vasarely. I mean, this was in our DNA. And we started to collect, and Gustavo, sort of a Venezuelan collection. And then Gustavo started expanding his businesses around Latin America, and I would go with him. And as he was in his business meetings, I would go to artist galleries and artist studios, galleries, etc., and had the idea of creating a Latin American collection, not just a national collection. Each one of those countries that we visit have extraordinary collections, but they're usually, or at the time, remember we're talking about 40 years ago, at the time they were rather more local, and Gustavo always had that vision of being not only Latin American, but actually global. And that's how it began.
The collection focuses on geometric abstraction. Why did you concentrate so intently on this one moment of?
Well, as I said, as I was growing up in the 50s, this is the type of art that we did see in public spaces, very much so. I've always thought of being psychoanalyzed about why I like abstraction so much.
We can get into that.
I can't tell you. But it is my aesthetic, and it always has been. Having said that, however, the collection does have many representations of realism, which was an equally valid movement that grew alongside abstraction in Latin America and has had much more exposure. And my feeling had been that the abstract movement in Latin America had not had any exposure, not just a little bit, but any. And so this is what we have chosen to work on and collect in depth.
One of the things that's so striking is how this collection anticipates current interests. That 40 years ago, was it easy to find these artists, or how did what was it like when you began collecting, and what kind of interest was there in the region for these artists?
Well, what was very interesting at the time, there was more of a traditional sense when you would go to people's homes and museums, much more works, representational works. And certainly when I would go to Brazil or Uruguay or Buenos Aires to find these works, which were being made at the time or had been made just a few years later, was very difficult. I mean, I remember one gallery there were only 2 galleries in Brazil at the time that carried this work. If you went into the back room and had a duster with you, you would dust them off and they'd bring them out. So you would find them, but they weren't easy to find. We had to go to many houses of people with Paulo Herkenhoff, who was very instrumental at the beginning of this adventure when we were in Brazil, and he would know that in a certain household they had a Willis de Castro. So you would go and visit these homes and talk to the owners and say, would you be interested in selling? And that's the way it was. And but it wasn't. But it was really an act of love in all of this. We never set out to be a collection or to be collectors. And then as the time passed, we realized the responsibility that would come with this.
The collection spans really 4 regions: Argentina, Brazil, Venezuela, Uruguay, and it has some core depth to it. Some artists that obviously you are.
Could you repeat that?
The collection has some core depths to it. Artists that you clearly really believe in and have been able to collect extensively. Do you want to talk about 2 or 3 of those? Maybe I don't know whether it's Gego or Oiticica.
Well, as you say, it was. The collection is basically from Uruguay in the 30s, and Argentina in the 40s, Brazil in the 50s, Venezuela in the 60s. Who would I talk about? All of these works were. We love all of these works. I would say, with the exception of 2 or 3 of these 100 and so pieces that we've given you today, that have always been in our homes at one point or the other. We don't collect to put in warehouses. And these paintings, because of their small format, were actually made for homes. Artists in those days weren't thinking of making works for museums in any event. But Gego, you asked specifically about Gego because I know that you have a particularly fondness for Gego. As we know, Gego originally was born in Hamburg and came to Venezuela and worked with these she would do beautiful constructions with wires and copper wires and aluminum wires, and they always had a certain vibration to them. And she calls them drawings without paper. And that's what they are. And I think her inspiration came from the tropical sun. You know, when you're in a place that's in the tropics at noon, and or in the Sahara, where there's so much sunlight that things vibrate. I think if she had stayed in Hamburg in the winters, her structures would have been very strict and severe. And this way there's a shimmer to them, an eternal movement that makes them very, very romantic. I think they're very beautiful. Elio Itisica from Brazil lived in the favelas, was breaking with all traditions, certainly of figurative paintings, and even breaking with the tradition of a very strong geometric abstraction movement that was in Brazil, mostly in Sao Paulo at the time. And in Rio, he started breaking those chains. And even though he worked with many squares and rectangles, they would be bursting into the atmosphere in a magnificent way. And he would use colors that, but nevertheless, he was very much of this earth. When you see many of his bolidos, or these boxes, they're all painted with the colors of the favela. He would use he believed in using the very poor materials of the favelas, what he could find. He would use sand or cardboard or whatever to create these wonderful works. And by the way, many of these works now are being examined by the research center at the Getty to see what did these artists use to create these works, because we didn't have easels and oils and canvases readily available the way you were. And that goes, I think, into the Research Institute of why, for me, even more important than the gift itself of the 100 works is the creation of the Cisneros Research Institute, because the Museum of Modern Art has been doing, in the past 8 or 9 years, such great research work in Latin America, in Central Europe, and Japan. And I've been very impressed the way you've done those programs. And the idea of the Institute is to help prolong and ensure that these programs of yours continue, and then perhaps add with them with symposiums and conferences and those things that institutes do.
Well, I should say, I'm sure everyone in this room is already familiar with what we colloquially call the CPPC, the Colección Patricia Phelps de Cisneros. And this foundation that maintains a fantastic website has actually been an amazing catalyst for research and conversations about Latin American art. And I think it's really important to see what you have achieved with the work of your foundation and collection as a catalyst for these conversations, and how that now can have a different kind of impact through the ongoing programs here at the museum. And what we're particularly grateful for is your commitment to scientific research and the Big Getty Project. I think there are 40 works from your collection that are currently being studied at the Getty Research Center. This combination of scientific research and ongoing art historical research creates a platform now that will enable scholars, artists, critics to really dig deep into this. And the head of your collection, Gabriel Perez Barreo, is here. And Gabriel, just wave your hand so that everybody can see who you are, because Gabriel has been a partner in all of these conversations, and we're very grateful for that as well.
I'd also like to thank, I hope he's in the audience, is Luis Perez Oramas. Luis, here he is, and Rafael Romero, who's our director from Venezuela. But between Paulo Herkenhoff, Rafael Romero, Luis Perez Oramas, and Gabriel Perez Barreiro, with the wonderful teams that they've created, we've been able to, well, we're here today. So just wanted to take a little minute to thank them.
So we are profoundly grateful for this gift, Patti. It is transformative. We are committed to not only producing a major exhibition of the gift no later than the end of 2021, but as soon as our new building is open, it will be one of the first exhibitions in our program. We are committed to making sure that this gift is accessible and visible immediately online, and thanks to the incredible work of Ramona Banyan, who is somewhere back there, Ramona, wave your hand way in the back. The gift is now fully live and accessible on our website. And we will begin immediately with the work of the Research Center, generating the programs and scholarship that will keep these works of art a vibrant part of the museum. And for all of that, Patti, thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, and thank everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. There is coffee upstairs, and I hope you'll join us up there. Those of you who want to remain for a photo op, please do so.